Hi, I'm Dr. Boyce Watkins from YourBlackWorld.com, and today we saw that Dr. Beverly Hall, the former superintendent of Atlanta Public Schools, has been indicted and will go on trial for a massive cheating scandal that has really rocked the educational world. And, you know, I couldn't help but try to understand why a former superintendent of the year would be going to prison for cheating for something that would normally just get someone fired. So to really try to understand and get perspective on some of this, I brought in Dr. Tyra Seldon. She's an educational expert out of Indianapolis. She is one of the most knowledgeable people I know, and she knows education. She knows public schools. So I have Dr. Seldon on the line. How are you today, Doctor?
I'm great. Thank you, Dr. Watkins. How are you?
I'm doing really well, really well. Now, I need to know, when I look at Beverly Hall's resume, I don't see her as a person who should be in prison. Maybe I could see her being fired for this, but prison, I mean, it just seems so extreme. And, and I have to admit, I noticed that she's also black. And, I'm just wondering, I mean, do you think something else is going on here? I mean, do you think she's being scapegoated or, first of all, let's start from the beginning, actually, before I get ahead of myself. What do you think could create conditions under which a superintendent would feel this much pressure to engage in such a widespread cheating scandal?
I think that the stakes that are attached to what are called high-stakes tests, your state standardized tests, are tremendous. Oftentimes, teachers' promotion, their merit pay becomes a factor based solely upon how well their students perform on those test scores. And so when you have one particular entity that's weighed so heavily, I think it does create kind of this pressure cooker where teachers may have students who are on the cusp of passing but who aren't quite there. And I think even your best and most well-intentioned teacher sometimes teaches to the test, to the extent that I think it becomes a blurry line between trying to help a student pass those tests as opposed to maybe, quote-unquote, cheating or giving them an edge or an advantage. But there's just so much pressure for teachers to demonstrate that their students have mastered certain skill sets or that they're proficient in certain skill sets. And unfortunately, one of the only recognized instruments that school districts use are test scores. And oftentimes those test scores are published, and part of the publication then goes along with a ranking. How well is this school? How does this school compare to this school? And I think that's part of it. It's part of the culture right now that may have precipitated this. And again, just assuming that they're innocent, because I don't want to prejudge, but definitely I could see where something like this could happen, even on the scale that is happening in Atlanta right now.
So, Dr. Seldon, I just have to say that I was stunned to see her, getting booked and taken to jail, and they originally posted her bail or made her bail $7.5 million, and it was only reduced after negotiation with prosecutors. When I see Beverly Hall, I don't see a prison inmate. I see my mother, and my mother's been in the educational system for, I want to say 25, 26 years, and it would be devastating for her to be facing this many years in prison. I mean, I don't know the exact number of years she's facing, but I think she's in a situation where she could easily spend the rest of her life behind bars. That's something you expect from a murderer, a rapist, a child molester, a bank robber even. But from a former superintendent of the year, I mean, doesn't that seem a little extreme to you?
This is unprecedented. I recently, when I, started finding out more and more about the case and was looking at different media outlets, their presentation of it, I started just doing some research and trying to figure out, has this happened before on this scale, this level, where a superintendent is charged in a criminal context? And I couldn't find anything. There have been instances where individual teachers or administrators have been involved in, quote-unquote, cheating scandals, and usually they're penalized by losing their jobs. And then that becomes a black mark in terms of their professional careers. But the extent to which the prosecutors are going after her, that does that bothers me. There's something very disconcerting about this. It almost does feel like a witch hunt. And to your earlier question, I think they're trying to make an example out of her, that there is some scapegoating going on. And the unfortunate part about it is that people are only honing in on that, and we're not having a larger conversation about how could something like this even come to fruition in the first place. What's going on in our educational systems that some of your teachers, there was one of the lawyers who spoke yesterday and said his client has been teaching for 20, 25 years. Why would someone jeopardize a very stable career, a potential pension, opportunities to advance and retire from a system for a test? And I think that's part of the question we need to ask. And I also do think that in terms of the charges that are presented against her, they do seem to be awfully trumped up for something like this. And again, the question I would ask is, was she peripherally aware of this? Was she actively or egregiously involved? And those are the types of questions I think that as we learn more information, those answers I think will be very telling, not just about what was happening in Atlanta public schools, but what's happening right now across the country in ways that this is just the tip of the iceberg because it's a part of the public discourse right now.
Well, I think that that we should talk about this. One of the things that I noticed, and I'm engaged in a fight against mass incarceration right now in this campaign with Russell Simmons, which is actually going pretty well. We've actually got 150 celebs and public figures to sign on to our letter to the president to address the overcrowding of prisons. And we've gotten people, we've gotten celebs as far across the board as, Scarlett Johansson and Jennifer Hudson to people like Ben Jealous, Al Sharpton, the presidents of Morehouse and Spelman, et cetera. And this links to the mass incarceration issue in my mind because it just seems that we are so quick to put people behind bars for almost nothing. And I think that when you have regular, nonviolent, law-abiding citizens, going to prison, like Dr. Beverly Hall, who actually reminds me of the woman in Connecticut who just got 12 years in prison for sending her child to the wrong school. It's leading us down a very dangerous road. And I'm sorry, but if people don't see the racial writing on the wall in this case, then they're absolutely out of their mind. The fact is that this is happening in Georgia, which is a state that that's notorious for incarcerating African Americans. I think that they're just trying to humiliate this poor woman. And I'm sorry, but she was, as you said, she's been an educator for many, many years. She was standing next to the president, the education secretary, Arnie Duncan, and other people as a shining example of what's possible in our educational system. And now she's on her way to prison. I mean, that's absolutely disgusting to me. And I think that it leads us to re-examine what incentives are being created in this system that relies on a stupid test to determine if the child has learned anything. We need an educational overhaul, and sending Ms. Hall to prison is definitely not going to be the answer. That's just my 2 cents on it. I'll let you get the last word, Dr. Seldon, if there's anything that you'd like to say on this.
I would say that if nothing else, this case reflects and represents why we as community stakeholders, as practitioners, as researchers, as parents, need to be keenly involved and aware of what's going on in our educational system. We cannot continue to turn a blind eye to basically give our children to these school districts and school systems and turn and pick them up at the end of the day. We need to be involved. And I think whether it's from the vantage point of being a parent or someone who simply cares, we need to start asking the right questions. How do you measure aptitude? How do you determine that a student has learned? What are the ways in which these measurements reflect the ability of our students in particular? And I think until we start asking those questions and until we start becoming involved, these decisions are going to be made by third parties, and those third parties are going to have a tremendous influence on the economic, social, and educational trajectory of our students. So if nothing else, I think this is an opportunity for us to have dialogue, discussion, and begin seeing ourselves as the activists that we are. Thank you so much, Dr. Watkins, for this opportunity.
Thank you, and you're welcome at the same time. And, there's actually one point that I forgot to, throw out there, which hit me when I read this. I think that by prosecuting this woman publicly the way they have, it's really, I mean, I'm sorry, to me, this is what I think about when I think about that term high-tech lynchings. Just where it's just unbelievable that she's possibly going to jail for this. I'm sorry, but they've just suddenly increased the occupational hazard of going into the teaching industry about tenfold. If I'm a young teacher and I'm thinking about going in to save the world and all this stuff, you're already dealing with other things like, do I teach at this inner city school and try to save the world knowing that I might get shot? Do I go into this thankless profession where I'm being underpaid and overworked on a daily basis, where I'm not given the resources that I need, but yet at the same time being judged harshly when my children don't turn out to what we want them to be? You're dealing with that already. And now you're dealing with the fact that if somebody accuses you of cheating or if you are somehow indirectly connected to a scandal that's going on because you were pressured into that, a lot of these subordinates were ordered to do what they did. You could go to prison. I mean, Beverly Hall wasn't the only one to get indicted. 35 people in that school district were indicted. That is crazy. That's insane to me. So, you have to forgive me for being upset about it, but I think it's racist. I think it's sick. I think it's disgusting. I don't think this woman deserves to go to prison. So there you have my perspective. Thank you. Thank you for your perspective, Dr. Seldon. And I want people to know that the reason I reached out to Dr. Tyra Seldon is because she's what I believe should be the future of education in Black America. I work with her closely on our educational initiatives, and I always say, Tyra, that you remind me of Marva Collins because of the way you so passionately speak about saving our kids, especially Black and brown kids, from this educational system that just isn't designed for them to succeed. So I want to say thank you for that.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And to those who are listening, I want to say thank you for checking us out at yourblackworld.com. And until we meet again, please stay strong, be blessed, and be educated. We are gone.